Hi, Grandma here, and I'm reading The House of 60 Fathers. And today I'm going to begin in the middle of chapter 6, in the Town of Terror. And in my book, I'm beginning on page 111, toward the top. So Tien Pao has made it to Hanyang, which is where he had left his family. He has fought against all the crowds of people who are leaving the town because the Japanese are bombing the town, invading the town. He has then realized that he doesn't know where his parents are in town. They probably aren't at the river just waiting for him to return, because that's where the Japanese were coming from. So where were they? And he's just pausing. He's a little confused as to what's going on. When the town was burning, the river was blood red with the glare of the flames. Whole houses crashed. As Tien Pao looked, the front of a 3-story building collapsed into the water among a roar of flames and a seething hiss of steam. Among the smoldering beams and crackling wreckage, an empty sampan came drifting toward Tien Pao. It burst into flames from the heat on the river. Flaming like a great torch, it drifted past. Tien Pao could stand no more. He jumped to his feet and turned to run. Behind him stood the hag. She had an insane, beady eye on him. "So your father and mother left you behind to shift for yourself," she cackled. Tien Pao nodded dumbly. "Then come with me, for I'm a sick old woman, and my family, too, left me behind to die." Tien Pao did not trust her shifty eyes. She still wanted to steal Glory of the Republic. He held the rope tighter, but he did not know what else to do. Hopelessly, he looked up at the insane old woman. In the street beyond them, there was hard, measured running of whole troops of soldiers. "Listen," the old woman said. "Now, even our soldiers are running away." She grabbed Tien Pao's hand, and he let himself be dragged along. The old woman suddenly stopped and took down her deep hamper-like basket, ripped the rope from Tien Pao's hand, and was going to dump the little pig into the basket. At that, Tien Pao fought her. He grabbed up Glory of the Republic and would not let her touch him. "Listen," the old hag said, "you can carry the basket with your precious pig, but we've got to hide him. Hanyang is starved. They'd steal him." Suddenly, she tipped the basket upside down. Out of the bottom rolled a thick, tied-up bundle of money. She scooped it up and shook it in Tien Pao's face. "Look, I have plenty of money for tickets to get on the train. It's our only chance. We'll fool our families. They left us behind to die, so we'll save ourselves. You'll be my family now." She was crazy. "I found the money," she whispered secretively in Tien Pao's ear. Her high, queer laugh cackled out again. She'd stolen that money. Tien Pao did not care about anything now except Glory of the Republic. He himself lowered the little pig to the bottom of the basket. Only then did he let the woman hang the basket over his shoulders and drag him on. He didn't care where. The beggar woman seemed to know every inch of the town. She hurried Tien Pao along alleys and down narrow passageways under buildings. Although she was old, she was wiry, and she ran like a frightened calf. Panting and gasping, they emerged from an alley and stood before a huge stone building. Beyond the gloomy building stood locomotives with long trains of cars behind them. The cars were almost hidden by the mobs of people milling around them. All the cars swarmed with people. They crowded every inch of every roof. They squeezed out of doorways and open windows. Men, women, children lay under the train between the enormous wheels. People even clung to the steely sides of the locomotives, and still more people stormed the standing trains. A heavy iron gate separated Tien Pao and the beggar woman from the rail yard where the train stood puffing. The old woman forced her way through the packed mass of people at the gate. She thrust a thick bundle of money at a man in uniform. The man grabbed the money. As if by magic, the gate drew open, but only wide enough to let Tien Pao and the old woman squeeze through. Behind them, the howling crowd surged forward, but soldiers with bayonets forced the mob back. Only those who had money, it seemed, could save themselves. Inside the gate, Tien Pao was almost lifted off his feet by the mob surging around the trains. The old woman shrieked and used her elbows. She had no shame. She even elbowed men out of her way, and if she had to, she got down on hands, knees, and crawled between the legs of men. But whenever the basket with Glory of the Republic got in Tien Pao's way so he could not follow her, she waited for Tien Pao or made room for him. "Hang on to me, hang on to me, follow me," she ordered shrilly, ranting, spitting, screaming. She forced herself a path. Tien Pao clung to her torn, dirty jacket. They reached the passenger train. There was no room for so much as a mouse on the whole plane. When she saw that, the old woman let out an insane scream. She cursed and spat and tore her thin hair. Tien Pao backed away from her. She was mad, mad. "There's still room in the freight train," a voice in the crowd shouted. In a moment, Tien Pao was lifted off his seat and swept away from the old woman. He was swept along in the crush of the crowd that stampeded toward the freight train on a farther track. He was carried along, his feet hardly touching the ground. His basket was almost torn from his back, the straps cut into his shoulders as if he'd been washed by a tide. He felt himself thrown up toward the open doorway of one of the freight cars. For a moment, he saw the high door before him. Then he was heaved by the crowd's surge under the train and against one of the huge iron wheels. He clawed himself up by the rim of the wheel. Glory of the Republic grunted in the basket. It was hopeless. The freight car was as packed as the passenger train. Even the wide doorway was solid with people. They teetered on the edge. Tien Pao clung to the wheel to keep himself from being crushed. Hopelessly, he looked up at the high doorway. For a moment, a tall soldier standing in the doorway looked down in his eyes. Suddenly, he stooped. His long arms shot out. He grabbed Tien Pao's collar and lifted him into the car like a drowned puppy. But the press of the crowd inside the boxcar was so great, Tien Pao could do no more than get a toehold on the edge of the doorway. He clung to the soldier's leg. The man turned on the people behind him. "There must be room for one thin, starved boy," he said savagely. "Stand back, or I'll make room." The people were packed in a solid mass, but somehow they made room. Tien Pao could edge into the doorway, but the basket on his back hung outside. And we know what's in that basket, right? His pig. There was nothing to be done about it. Without warning, the freight train suddenly lurched into motion. The people on the ground went mad. They flung themselves up at the moving doorway, but the long-armed soldier, without a muscle moving in his face, flung them back as fast as they came. Tien Pao clung to his leg. At last the soldier looked at him. "Because you remind me of my firstborn I left behind 7 years ago in my house by the sea, I saved you." Then he noticed the basket. "Throw that away," he said harshly. "There's no room." He grabbed the straps and jerked them down Tien Pao's arms. "Please, soldier," Tien Pao begged. "My pig is in there." He looked anxiously at the masked people. "Now, you will want to eat him, but he saved an American airman from the Japanese," he said desperately, "and he is all I have." "Oh ho, is it so?" The soldier laughed. "Saved an airman, eh? Then into the basket with you too. That way you won't take extra room. Don't worry, I'll guard it." He lifted Tien Pao into the deep basket. He turned and struck the leather holster of his huge pistol. "None of you want to eat pig, do you?" No one answered a word. The train had stopped. For no seeming reason, the freight train had stopped. Now, instead, the passenger train began chugging into motion on the other track. Tien Pao saw the beggar woman the moment the passenger train began rolling. There she was, clinging to the side of the car, pulling herself in through a window. Hands reached out and dragged at her, but evidently there was no room. There she hung, half through the window, half out. The shameless, mad hag had got on the passenger train after all. Now, with the passenger train moving along on the other track, Tien Pao's freight train began jolting and jerking again. But at that moment, there came the sudden hard clatter of rifle fire. Bullets shrieked and whistled along the train. One slammed overhead into the thick wooden wall of the boxcar. Now, the soldiers who had guarded the great iron gate came running. Streaming through the gate behind them came the whole mad mob of people. The Japanese had reached the train station. Bullets screeched and crashed, and people came running after the rolling trains. And then the passenger train unaccountably stopped. Now it was going back. It started rolling back to the station and the Japanese. The soldier's hands cramped so tightly around the edge of Tien Pao's basket that the whole basket squeaked and groaned. "What is it? What is it?" Tien Pao yelled up at him. "Don't you see?" the soldier yelled. "The last car came uncoupled in the station, and the fools are going back for it." "Oh, they can't. Oh, the fools, they can't." Still, the passenger train kept backing. Now bullets clanged against the iron side of the locomotive. Bullets smashed into the cars. Windows shattered. A man sagged in the window. People toppled off the roof and out of open doorways. Still, the train kept backing, and for some bewildering reason, now the freight train stopped once more. The soldier in the doorway shook his helpless fist. Tears rolled unnoticed down his cheeks. "Now it's finished," he groaned. "The engineer got shot in the cab. I saw him fall. No one now is guiding the train, but it keeps backing. It keeps backing." With a groaning lurch, the freight train got under motion. It chugged forward in a slow, agonizing crawl. It crept out of the station yard. It gathered speed. All along the track, people were running hopelessly, uselessly after it. A hail of bullets followed the train, and still, the driverless passenger train kept slowly backing. Flames were shooting out of every station window now, but surely, slowly, the train backed into the burning station. Tien Pao scrunched down in the deep basket to hide the sight. The soldier turned his head away. Wow, that certainly didn't end up the way I expected it to end up. So all the people on the passenger train now are back in the midst of the fighting, with the Japanese shooting from the station. And the freight train that Tien Pao is on its way out. Wonder if they're going to be okay. Well, sometimes I take a sneak peek, and I'd have a peek here of the next chapter, the house of 60 Fathers, which is the name of the book. I've been wondering all along when we were going to find out what that meant, the House of 60 Fathers. So I guess we'll find out in this next chapter what is meant by the House of 60 Fathers. See you next time.